and welcome. I'm Zombie Kitty and welcome to Spooky Month. And has anyone heard of a little show called Squid Game? So a few days ago I put up a Twitter poll basically saying I've nearly finished the Netflix show Squid Game and I want to do a video on it. And I said, what would you guys want me to do? Now, would you want me to do episode reactions? So like what every other YouTuber on the planet is doing at the moment, where I react to each episode, considering I had nearly finished it? Or did you want a video of me talking about it? AKA like the Free Guy video I did a while back. And 67% said they wanted a spoiler talk video. 33% said they wanted episode reaction videos. So I guess here we are. Welcome to the My Thoughts spoiler talk video on Squid Game. How this is going to work is going to be like the Free Guy video. So what I did with that is I talked about non-spoilers first, just my general thoughts on the show, or in that video on the film. And then I had a little clip in between and then went straight into spoilers. So I split up the spoilers and non-spoilers. So if you've not seen Squid Game, don't worry. The first section of this video is going to be non-spoiler. So yeah, if you are probably one person on the planet who has not seen it yet, or still has it on their watch list and haven't had time to watch it, don't worry, I'm only going to do my general thoughts on the show. And then I'll split the video up into sections, and then we'll go straight into spoilers. So you will have time to switch off if you don't want to be spoiled. But with that being said, I guess let's start off. So firstly, this is my favourite Netflix show. This show is amazing, and I've said in previous reviews and articles that I write that original ideas don't exist anymore. However, what makes ideas original is the execution of them. The death game genre is one that's been going on for decades, starting with like Battle Royale in 2000. We've had the Hunger Games. We've had even the animes King's Game and Mirai Nikki, aka Future Diary, as well as the film As the Gods Will. So the death game genre is not that new. However, the execution of it is, and I think that this is executed very, very differently compared to others. The difference with this one is that while the other shows and films have the participants being forced into it, this is different where the participants choose to be involved in the games. And choose to take part in that. Whereas the first two episodes really demonstrate that, is that they have a choice in this matter. And if they want to back out, they can do. That is one thing that you need to sort of separate from the other sort of death game film and shows. I forgot that I have not done a synopsis for this. So, if you don't know what Squid Game is about, it is a South Korean Netflix show. It's very quickly becoming the most successful show on Netflix, and at one point it was #1 across the world, including here and America and South Korea. So what it is it follows a guy called Ji Hung. I apologise, I'm going to pronounce the names completely wrong, and I do apologise in advance. Mispronunciations seem to be a bit of a skill of mine. But Ji Hung he's broke, he's a single father, he has a gambling addiction, and one day he comes across this businessman on the train, in the train station, played by Gong Yoo, who I've seen in Train to Busan. He's a really good actor, but he basically says, play a game with me and you'll win, I think it was 100,000 won, which is the currency in South Korea. So Ji Hung eventually agrees and then wins the money and thinks, oh, okay, that was easy. There's more to it. And again, I'm trying to be careful because I don't know what's in the trailer, so I don't want to spoil things, but it's a huge foreshadowing to what the show will end up being. He eventually wins the money, and the businessman says, oh, by the way, if you want to win more money, there's a game going on at the moment, we don't have that many spaces left. He gives him a business card. Ji-Hyung's situation gets a bit worse. Basically, he finds out that his daughter and her stepfather and mother are going to be moving to America in the next year, and he's able to get custody of her if he can show the courts that he has financial stability. So there's his motivation, I guess, to join the games. And what the game is it starts off with 456 participants, and yeah, essentially they have to play 6 games across 6 days. These are all based on childhood games in South Korea. I feel like I can spoil what the first episode is. So the first episode is, or the first game, I guess I can spoil this. I think everyone knows what this one is. The first game is Red Light, Green Light, with a very creepy doll, which is apparently based on like a character that was featured in school textbooks back in the 70s and 80s. So there's a lot of influence from 70s and 80s South Korea, and that culture at the time. Yeah, so they have to get through these games, survive them, and if they're eliminated from the game, they're eliminated, meaning they die. That's what this is, and it goes to last man standing. Last man standing gets the prize money. I should never do plot synopses because I'm terrible at them, but there we are, that's what it is. But I think this is a fantastic show. And again, like, all of the participants are there of their own consent. They chose to be here. They're not forced into it like, you know, all the other Death Game things we've seen. They choose to be here, and I think that's what makes it stand out. I think another thing that makes it stand out as well is that the characters are put at the centre stage before the games. So this is very big on character development, on what the characters' backgrounds are and why they're there, with the games being secondary. I mean, yes, there's a couple of episodes where the game does take up the majority of the episode. One of them that I really want to talk about, that I don't know, I feel I'm still going to stick it to spoilers, but I feel like everyone knows, which is episode 6. That one. But I'm going to stick that in spoilers because I do want to talk about that one quite a lot, actually. And the other characters we have is, so we've got Ji-Hyung, who's the main protagonist. We've got Sang-woo, who was his childhood best friend, who was really smart. He went off to, from what I can imagine, it was a really like top-end university, and he tells his mother that he's on a business trip in America. We very quickly find out that that's not the case, and he's actually in a very different situation than what he's telling his mother. We have Ali, who is from Pakistan, and his introduction's great because it's very small, but it kind of tells you all you need to know. We have, for most of the show, he's known as the old man, so I will leave his name actually in spoilers, but he's player 1. We have Seo Byuk. I apologise, I'll put the spelling of the actual name down here, because my pronunciation is going to be terrible, who starts off in the episode, in the show, as a pickpocket, and then it expands from there. And then others we have is like 212. God, we have the main bully, I can't remember his name. I'll put the name down here. I can't remember his name. I do want to very quickly point out, and this might get the pitchforks out, so please don't. But I do want to point out, I did watch most of this show in English dub, which I was then told more than halfway past the show that this was not a good option to have. So I think the last 2 or 3 episodes I did watch in Korean. I will be rewatching them in Korean because, again, I found out way too late that that's not the way that you should be watching it. I mean, regardless, it's not the way you should be watching it anyway. But, you know, if you guys want to watch it in English dub, that's completely fine. But in regards to what I've just said, the reason that people have said that that's not the way to watch it is because, firstly, they said the voice acting wasn't very good, which I think it was fine, it was passable, but also apparently some of the translations are not accurate. So a lot of people have been saying that you won't get the full context or you won't get the full meaning of something if you watch the English dub. So this is something that I will be going back to, and it also gives me another excuse to watch Squid Game. But I did just want to point that out quickly. But yeah, the main sort of bully with the snake tattoo, from what I remember, the English dub actually never introduces him, which is a bit of a problem. So he's another one, and he's the antagonist. There's a lot of antagonists in this. But yeah, so that's kind of our main group. I think all of the characters, they're all different, they all stand out, and they're all really well acted. Obviously minus the English dub thing, which I was personally fine with, but I wouldn't say it was great. But I think actually, forgetting that and pushing that aside, I think actually they are really good in these roles. And by the time you learn about each character, because the show does take its time to let you get to know each character. So by the time their inevitable demise occurs, the death isn't meaningless because the viewer has actually followed them and followed these characters. They know the motivation, they know their character arc. So when it does unfortunately come to an end, it is emotional. It is sad. And I think that something that really makes this stand out is that the character development and the character focus of the show is so good. The writing is so good. So then, yeah, you do end up feeling for every main character. Even the ones that aren't so nice. You do feel some emotion there. It may not be like sadness, but it's some emotion there. I think another thing that I really like is, like I said, the games are all based on childhood games that were played mainly in the 70s and 80s in South Korea. There are some games that translate over to the Western world. So like Red Light, Green Light, there's another one as well later on. And I think the childhood theme of the show is actually carried throughout, not just in the games, but also in the music, in the visuals, and even like the actual setting. So the main setting of where they wake up is this huge warehouse with like bunk beds everywhere, and they wake up in these like tracksuits and stuff, which I'm sure will be a Halloween costume this year, along with the pink soldiers. I'm sure that will be, you know, a popular Halloween costume this year. But I think as well that even in the first episode, to the antagonist, and I'm going to call her player 67 because that was her number, but 67 and the antagonist clash basically, and it's clear that they've known each other before and went away on bad terms, let's say. But I like this sort of scene because it really sort of shows that this is that the sort of childhood nature has kind of carried into this part as well, into this little warehouse away from the games. And even when the crowd are sort of circling round them and watching them fight, it's like, oh, this is the playground. This is the school playground. Like, there's a really big sort of emphasis on childhood and childlike nature, but when you put it into the adult world and mesh it with the harsh reality that the adult world can bring, it brings on a whole new meaning. And even the visuals, like the main staircase, which again is probably going to very quickly become a famous picture, It's basically a mix between like a McDonald's old play area, a fun house, and like MC Escher's Relativity, which I'll put the picture up here so you guys know what I'm talking about. But even that, like, it looks wacky, it looks sort of quite bright and colourful, and it also looks very simple to again replicate that sort of childhood nature that's now been lost. And even the music sort of feels very childlike. So in episode 1, where Ji Hong is playing the game with the businessman, with the salesman, that there's a track that's being played on a recorder, and that's very sort of that feels very sort of childlike. And especially for someone like me, like in Western schools, I don't know if it's still the case now, but at the time we had to learn the recorder. It was a compulsory thing. So it weirdly brings me back like memories, which is a strange thing for the show to do, but I think it really sort of hammers home that like the childhood memories are not just in the games, they're in the setting, they're in the music, and again, like the visuals as well, like everything's sort of bright and colourful, and then you are shown the real world, and it's very dark, there's a lot of greys, there's a lot of blacks, there's a lot of browns, to basically show that the adult world is a lot more serious and their situation is a lot more serious. And then you come into here, and pushing the death aside, it's a lot more like vibrant and bright and alive. Not necessarily in the best way, but it is alive. Like, it's a lot more, again, not in the best way, but exciting compared to their horrible situations and financial ruin that they're in when they step outside into the real world. So this was a bit of a muddled, non-spoiler thing. This is why I write notes. This is why I write notes. But basically what I'm saying is that I think Squid Game is more than just a death game show. It does hold symbolism in not just the visuals, but in the music, in the setting, in the structure of the setting, as well as the games. So there is more to it than just, oh, they're playing death games, like, and that's it. Like, there is more to it than that. And I would say, if you do have this on your watch list, actually, I would really recommend it. There's a reason it's become so popular, and a reason why it's become, or about to become, Netflix's most successful show. It's brilliant, and actually it was very clever of them, and actually really good of the creator to put the characters first before the games, because this is more character driven and story driven, rather than just, oh, we're going to play games and there's going to be blood and guts and it's going to be really gory. And that's, yeah, there's gore there, because there has to be, but that's not really the focus of the show. It is more to do with, okay, the characters are here because of this, this and this. You're going to like them, but you have to know we have to kill them off. And that's kind of what it is. And I think that's what makes this so great, is that it does have really strong characters and great writing. And the visuals are just memorable and amazing as well. So, yeah, I would say watch Squid Game if you haven't. Again, knowing what it is from what I've said, even though what I've said is probably very, very muddled. This is why I take notes. But yeah, you need to know that this is still like a death game show. You still need to know that it is going to be like Hunger Games or Battle Royale, in a sense of people are going to be eliminated, meaning they die. And it is going to end up being last man standing. So you do need to know that going into it. But I would say if you're into that kind of genre, then I'd say watch it. But yeah, let's go into spoilers. Okay, so how I'm going to do this is I'm probably going to go, I think it's going to be easier for me to go game by game. So the first one is red light, green light. I won't go too much into this one just because this is kind of the famous one. I feel like everyone knows this one by now. And even if you haven't seen the show, I'm sure you've seen that sort of girl statue. But I guess the one thing I do want to mention actually is the way that you find out that elimination means death, because that was brilliant. That was brilliant. And even because I think the way that it's done is that you don't see anything happen. Like, you don't see the guy actually get shot. There's a gunshot and then he just falls. And I think that's actually quite clever, because even though your brain tells you, yeah, that was a gunshot, you can't really see where it's coming from. So even the players are like, what was that? What was that sound? Was that a bang? Was that a gunshot? What was that? So I think that was a really clever way of executing that moment. And even when the second guy runs, and it's again, I think this is probably going to be a very famous picture of the woman covered in blood doing this and like wiping the blood off her face. Like, I think that's going to be a very famous picture. But again, it's a very striking image. And I think this is something that I sort of briefly touched on in the non-spoiler section, is that the visuals are quite striking. Even if they're not very nice. But I think that was a really good way of introducing what this is going to be. Because everyone knows red light, green light. Like, even I do. Although in my school, I think it was called something different. So I can't remember what it was called originally, but in my school it wasn't called red light, green light, but it was that game. So it's something that I feel like is universally familiar. So that was a good way to sort of introduce what these games are going to be. The second game was the Dalgona, I want to say, the honeycomb. So this was, you choose a shape, you then get this sort of honeycomb disc with the shape on it, and the idea is you have a little needle, you've got to scratch out the honeycomb out, the pattern out of the honeycomb, and then make sure that your honeycomb doesn't break. I might put a GIF in because I don't think I'm explaining this right, but this one I think was kind of like a calming one after the first game, but I think what makes this good is you don't think it's going to be as tense as it is. You don't think it's going to be as tense as it is. And then once you've realised really what's going on, and that Jihan has chosen an umbrella, whereas everyone else has chosen really simple shapes, you think, well then, this isn't going to go too well. And I think that one was a really good sort of change of pace for the viewers, as well as still being tense. So you still get the idea of, yeah, there's going to be some quieter games. It doesn't mean they're going to be any less calming in themselves, but they're going to be quieter. The other sort of disadvantage is that they still get shot if their Dalgona cracks or breaks. So obviously the gunshot is going to make people jump, and that does happen. So after the first guy gets shot, a woman then looks down at her shape, realises that she's cracked her one because she jumped when the gun went off, and so she's eliminated as well. So you do also have that fear too. So the next round was tug of war. I do just want to quickly say, if you hear barking, that's my dogs, apologies. But the third round was tug of war, and I think this was really where the whole idea of death becoming the fault of the other players was apparent. Because before then, the previous two rounds, all the players were just out for themselves. This one, because it's tug of war, the other team's winning is because of the other team dying, essentially. So yes, one team does have to win, but the other one loses, meaning they die, and it would be because of the winning team. And this was really where things started to take that sort of pattern, to be honest. And that's kind of where the show kind of took on a different sort of tone, I guess. Because again, whereas the others, it was like, okay, all the players were out for themselves, and if they got shot, it was because of their own doing. With this one, it's like, no, they're getting killed and stuff because of the other people, the other players. And this is where the emotions started kicking in. I will say the player one, the elderly man, his sort of strategy for tug of war I thought was really, really cool. And when you saw that go into motion, you were like, oh yeah, that does make sense. Like, that's really, really clever. And even when he's doing the red light, green light, he's really good at it. So you immediately think, wow, like, what's up with this guy? He's really good. And originally, even with that, I thought his whole story arc is that he has a brain tumour. I can't remember if he says it's inoperable, but he says it's rapidly growing, so he doesn't have very long to live. So I thought, well, him enjoying, and like, he was happy and smiling during red light, green light, and even tug of war. And I was like, him enjoying these games makes sense, because he literally has nothing to lose. And this is before I knew what was really going on, but I was like, he has nothing to lose. He's going to die in a short amount of time anyway. So I was like, I get why he's enjoying this. Because it's the moral argument of, would you rather let something slowly kill you, or would you rather just have a quick death in these games? So I got why he was okay with everything that was going on. And then you found out what was really going on with the old man. Who, I think his name was Ilinam? I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. He reveals his name in episode 6, which, yeah, we'll get to. We'll get to that. Well, I guess we'll get to that now, because the next game was the marbles. Episode 6 was essentially the sadness, and everyone cries. It all goes bad, everyone cries. So in this one, we lost Ali, and he paired up with Sungwoo, who... yeah, let's talk about Sungwoo. Sungwoo is the smart best friend or childhood friend of Ji-hung. And again, he's smart. With him and getting the marbles, it was a game of wits. The idea was that the players had to split into pairs, and then they were each given a pouch of marbles. I think it's 10 marbles each. And the idea was that the player had to get the other person's marbles before the timer ran out. And then whoever had 20 marbles by the end of it won, the other player lost. And they also said, like, don't use violence to get the marbles. You cannot fight, you have to play either a game. And in Sungwoo and Ali's case, it was a game of wits, essentially. Sungwoo tells him a particular thing and tells him to go off and find other players because they'll take their time. We're trying to decide who's going to win and who's losing, so take their marbles as they're deciding. Which, on second viewing, and once you think about it, makes no sense. But it really showed that Sungwoo was the smart one and knew how to work around people, whereas Ali, unfortunately, was quite naive and innocent. And he was very trusting of people, which I have seen people complain about, but I got, and I think that really spoke to his character. And in a sense, Ji-hung was like that as well. Not as much, but he still had positivity and that sort of innocence to him. So I don't know, I get the complaints, but I don't agree with them. But that did make it all the more sadder. It's assumed we lose the old man, and we lose Sebyuk's partner, who I can't remember her name. Again, I'll put the name down below. But her partner, the female partner, was interesting because her point of view made sense. So all they end up doing is they end up waiting until like the last minute and then go, okay, we're just going to do one round. Whoever can throw their marble furthest towards the ball wins. And this is where you get their backstories and why they're there. So, Sei is from North Korea. and she wants to get her mother into South Korea to safety. Whereas the other one, the partner, she got out of prison and then was then given the card to get to Squid Games. So she literally has nothing. She has no family, no friends or anything. So for her, it made sense that when she just dropped the marble and said, okay, you win. Like, that made sense because she had nothing to go back to even if she won. And she said, you know, my life won't change. I have nothing. So while this one really showed that when faced with a life and death situation, humans will do whatever they can to survive. And while it's horrible and while I bawled like an absolute baby, that context. So I was binge watching this, and that was the last episode that I was going to watch before eventually going to bed. That was the one I picked. So yeah, not the best one. Yeah, and that was the episode where everyone cried. But I think at the same time, I don't know, I can't blame them. Like, even Sang-woo, I was like, how dare you, blah, blah, blah. But I was like, you want to survive, you want to live, and you have to get it in a non-violent way. So I got his point of view, because originally Ali actually won. So Sang-woo wanted to get the marbles back, so he went, okay, you go off, you go search for other players, blah, blah, blah. And Sang-woo switched the pouch of marbles, and then gave Ali what it turned out to be a pouch of rocks. Which, when I first saw the episode, I thought what Sang-woo had done had only given him a couple of marbles. But it's so much worse, like, that one broke me. That was horrible. But again, like, I don't know, I can't blame any of them. When faced with a life and death situation, humanity and even animals will try to find a way to survive, no matter what. It's an ugly truth, but it's the truth. And this episode really showed what lengths people will go to survive. So I think it was a very clever episode that had to happen, but it was still awful. I will say one thing though, after like being really upset and emotional about it, I did think about this the next day. So the old man does end up getting eliminated. They announce it, you hear the gunshot, but you don't actually see him get shot. He is the only one where you don't see him die or get shot in the whole show. The beginning of episode 7, you do see Ali dead in the coffin. The old man, you never see him actually die or be dead. So, weirdly enough, what the Saw franchise and what Marvel films have taught me is that if you don't see a dead body on the screen, if you don't see someone die, they're not dead. And I was already starting to suspect the old man even before that. It was a couple of things, just a couple of little things that he said in previous episodes. Pardon me. Where I was like, that's a bit weird that you've said that, but I'll let it pass, I'll let it slide. And then that episode I was like, hang on a minute, we never saw him die. So that's when I started suspecting, actually, I think the old man's going to come back. Let's just get straight to it. Old man is the big boss of everything. He's in charge of everything. And even when he explains it in the finale, I was like, okay, I think the Jigsaw Killer and you would probably be good friends. Like, there's similarities there of, like, he wanted to give people a chance to live. But it was purely, like, we had too much money, we didn't know what to do with it, life was too easy for us, so it got boring. So we thought, okay, we'll give other people a chance who need the money. It will give us entertainment, and they'll get money if they survive. Which I was like, I get it, I think, but also that's a very Jigsaw Killer thing and way of thinking. which I thought was quite amusing. Going back to the games, the next one was the stepping stones. So it was a bridge, quite high up, and it was sort of 2 lanes with stepping stones of glass. One of the glass would be tempered, so quite thick glass. One of them would just be normal glass, so if you stepped on it, you smashed it and fell through. I think this was probably my favourite one. This was the most interesting one. And once again, we have the tension coming back. Because you don't know which one is which. I did like, near the end though, I think there's literally like two sort of stepping stones left. 1 or 2 stepping stones left. So they're practically at the end. And there's Sang-woo, Se and Ji-hyung has survived, and there's another guy. So the other guy, it's revealed that he used to work in, I think it was a glass making factory or something, or he used to work in like glass making. So he can tell the difference, which I thought was really, really cool, because they kind of hint towards something like that earlier on, and it turns out that guy was completely bluffing. So when this guy said the same thing, and I was like, yeah, come on. And then it's like, oh, he actually wasn't lying. And then they ruined that by having the front man turn the lights off so he can't tell. And I was like, oh, that's messed up, but I get why you're doing that. So I think that one was probably my favourite, just because it was quite an interesting one. And I think even, like I've said in the non-spoiler thing, visual-wise, it was amazing. I think, and again, sort of the visuals are beautiful. They are really, really cool. And it's a show, I guess. Like, it's a spectacle. Because one thing I haven't mentioned is the VIPs, who are the spectators. They're the betters. Like what we saw, it kind of echoes sort of Ji-hyung's gambling addiction in the first episode with the horse racing. And I will say one thing. I think the one thing I didn't really like was that in the finale was that the front man, who is like the lower down from the old man, he says that when Ji-hyung wins, he says that actually Ji-hyung asks, why are they doing this? And he says, it's for fun, it's for entertainment, you like horse racing, for us, you are the horses. And that's it. And I kind of wish, I get why it was explained to Ji-hyung, but I wish it hadn't been explained to the viewers. I don't know, I was a bit like, yeah, I kind of got that even from the first episode of what was going on and what that meant. So I do kind of wish that hadn't been spelled out for us. But I don't know, I get why, but yeah, it was something I was a bit like, oh, you didn't really need to say that. The last game was Squid Game, which is once again back in the room where Green Light, Red Light was played. And so the last people left is Sang-woo and Ji-hyung, and I think it's a really nice sort of circle back round, not only to the Red Light, Green Light game, the first game, but also to the opening scene of episode 1, where you see them playing the Squid Game as kids. And I think that was really nice sort of circle round. I don't know, it felt like a really nice conclusion, in a weird way, of like, yeah, okay, these are childhood friends who are coming back to play the same game they used to play as kids, but the stakes are much higher now. The stakes are much higher, and the adult world has not been kind to them, and that echoes here as well. I did think it made sense that Sang-woo sacrificed himself and killed himself. I think that did make sense. He wanted to compete against Ji-hyung to have, I guess, a worthy opponent, I think was the implication. But I think that would have made sense. I think there's probably a lot more that I could talk about, but I'm looking at the timer of my camera and I've been talking for quite a while. The VIPs, I don't really want to mention too much. Again, they're the betting people. The humans taking part in the Squid Game are the horses. That was really sort of obvious again, like I've said from episode 1. I kind of got that, what do you call it, like reflection. That's the wrong word to use, but you get what I mean, like, or representation, I guess. Like, I did kind of understand that from episode 1. There is a side plot involving a policeman trying to find his brother, and this is what I thought was interesting, and I want to know more about this one, because his brother turns out to be the front man, who won a few years ago and then never returned. And it turns out that Squid Game has been going on for years and years, which again would kind of make sense. It wouldn't just be a one-off thing. It would be going on, ongoing. And even in the finale, Ji-Hung sees that businessman again, playing with someone else. So it makes sense that this wouldn't be a one-off thing. This would just be an ongoing organisation, as it were. But I want to know if there is going to be a season 2, which, I mean, come on. There has to be. With how popular this show has been, there has to be. I can't see there not being one. But I think the creator of the show has said that if there was going to be a season 2, it would be exploring the front man, which I kind of want, because I do want to know more about him. We don't really learn that much about him, apart from he was the policeman's brother. He won a few years ago, and then just never came back. So I do want to know what his side of the story is. I think that will be really interesting. So if season 2 does want to explore that, then yeah, go for it. The other thing I had a bit of a problem with, and I talked about this with someone actually on Twitter, is the very last scene of the series. So the very last scene of the series, Ki-hung wins. It's a year later, and he's done nothing with the money, because I think it's mainly because of guilt, because of what he had to do to get that money, which I can't blame him for. But eventually he does end up using the money to help Sang-woo's mum, to help Sai's, I think it's her brother, who's in a home, who's in like foster care, and he decides he's going to go and see his daughter and the stepfather in America. So he's about to board the plane, and then sees the salesman and the other guy who was going to take part in Squid Game. He tells him, no, don't do that, never do that. And then he takes the card and phones up the number and says, I'm here, I'm still here, I'm not a horse, I'm a person. I will come after you. That kind of thing. Is that sort of speech. And they tell him, no, get on the plane. Which firstly shows you that even though he won, they were still watching him. They knew he was at the airport. They knew he was on that, not runway, but the tunnel leading towards the plane. They knew that. And the series ends with him hanging up the phone, turning round, and it's assumed that he didn't get on the plane and he's actually going to try and find the organisation to take them down. Now, I have had a conversation about this on Twitter regarding this, because I wasn't really sure how I felt about that ending. Because I think on one end, yeah, it makes sense that he would want to do that. He's a different person now than he was first going into it. So it does make sense that he'd want to take down that organisation to prevent other people taking part. At the same time, he promises in the first episode, he promises his daughter, oh, things are going to be better next year. I'll get you a better present, I'll be a better father. And then it's like, hang on, a year's gone by, you haven't done anything with the money, and you decided not to get on the plane to see your daughter. Father of the year. So I'm a bit sort of undecided on what I think of that ending. Because on one side, yeah, I understand. On the other side, I'm just like, I have been talking for quite a while. This is going to be a really long video. I didn't expect that. But overall, yeah. Essentially what I'm saying is Squid Game is amazing. It's my new favourite show. Go watch it. Go watch it. And if it's on your Netflix watch list and it's just been sitting there, yeah, go watch it. It's amazing. But also, like I said at the beginning, like, you need to know what genre it belongs to. It is in the Hunger Games sort of genre and narrative, and you do need to know that and be ready for that. And then be emotionally ready for episode 6, because oh my god. I'm going to end this video here. This was my review and my thoughts on Netflix's Squid Game. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you all soon. Bye!